white figures pacing construction sites at 2 a.m., hospital wheelchairs rolling on their own, guards holding full conversations with people you can't see on camera, and UFOs. This image was captured by a motion detector camera at a construction site in Birmingham. When the security guards went to check things out, there was nobody there. On August 18, 2020, motion sensor cameras were triggered at a construction site in Birmingham city center. The alert came in at 1:53 a.m., showing what looks like a woman in a long white dress walking through the site. She's leaning forward slightly, looks pale, and seems to be holding something in her hands. The alert was sent directly to Adam Lees, the managing director of Limitless Security, who was monitoring the site remotely. He immediately contacted the guards on duty and told them to investigate. They did a full patrol, but according to Lees, they went out straight away. It was within minutes, and there was no sign of anybody there or of anybody ever being there. It was really bizarre, end quote. The image really got under Lee's skin. He said, "Imagine looking at this image when you've been woken up at 2 in the morning and are half asleep. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I never believed in ghosts, but I can't explain this." Afterward, he tried to look into the history of the area, but he couldn't find anything obvious that explained what showed up on camera that night. This next one comes out of Thailand. Security footage at a hospital with a wheelchair rolling on its own. Hospitals, they're already heavy. I can only imagine how creepy it would be working at one overnight. At the start of the video, the wheelchair is completely still, and then without anyone touching it, it slowly rolls forward. A few seconds later, it stops and it starts moving again, this time rolling backward. The hospital director noticed the wheelchair parked outside an emergency room and couldn't figure out why it was there. That's what led him and other staff members to review the CCTV footage. What makes this even creepier is that this wheelchair had been donated to the hospital after its previous owner passed away. One commenter, a hospital worker, wrote, "This is a normal thing in a hospital, which all medical staff know. What they have to deal with every night aren't just patients." Others focused on the smaller details, watching the way the wheelchair pauses then changes direction. It's very strange. Working nights at a cemetery must be hair-raising enough as is, but security guard Joshua Runyon in Savannah, Georgia has had some especially eerie experiences. He started filming his shifts and posting the clips to TikTok. He wanted proof of all the strange stuff that kept happening. Stuff like this.
Jesus Christ.
Other nights were even worse. Joshua was on patrol one night when he noticed the lights flickering. He went to investigate, and this is what happened.
What's going on here? Nope. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, effing done is right. And it's not just voices either. Doors in the chapel have been caught moving on their own, opening and shutting without anyone there. In the mausoleum, he's recorded loud banging noises. Joshua says the activity got so intense that it drove another security guard to quit. The footage you're looking at here was captured by a security guard in Turkey, and it's not the only piece of footage he got. I mean, this is even crazier. This craft was supposedly filmed flying over the skies of Kumburgaz, Turkey. How often is it that we actually get to see, a detailed craft rather than just mysterious lights in the sky? All this footage comes from Yalchin Yalman, a night security guard who started noticing some really strange stuff in 2007. While on his shifts by the Sea of Marmara, he kept seeing weird lights in the sky. At first, he just watched, but then he bought a video camera so he could record what was happening. And between 2007 and 2009, he caught round, oval, sometimes triangular objects hovering in the night sky. Some locals say as many as 20 people saw these lights with them. The footage got shared online and quickly caught the attention of UFO researchers. A local UFO group said the objects couldn't be explained as birds, planes, satellites, or weather phenomena. Yalman even spoke about his sightings on TV and at events, insisting he had no idea what he was seeing, but that it was real.
Moving on to number 5 now, we have the dolls. One girl said she used to work the night shift at a Greasy Spoon diner. There were usually a lot of drunk people there. Another waitress finished at 4 a.m, so she was usually alone until 7 a.m. One night her co-worker left and then returned just a few seconds later. She had a weird half smile on her face and said, "Someone put something on your car." Judging by her look, she knew it wasn't good. She went out to see every inch of her car was covered in naked dolls. There were hundreds of them. Cabbage Patch, Barbies, baby dolls, you name it, it was there. They all had different shapes and sizes. The only thing they all had in common was that they were completely naked. It took 55 trash cans to get rid of them. She was scared. In the nights that followed, she began to get very creepy calls at around 4:15 am. It was a voice that would ask her if she liked the gift. The calls got angrier and more abusive as the nights went on, and then one night at 4:15 am, the phone rang and all she heard was popping noises, no voices, and then the phone hung up. It's been 9 years since then and she hasn't been called since. She's curious about what happened, but also very glad it's all over. Next up at number 4 now, we have The Creature. This story was told by a woman who worked at a group home for disturbed youth. She said that 15 years ago, she was sitting in the hallway and she just felt like she was being watched all night. It wasn't the kids, they were all in bed. It was an almost physical sensation, an unseen pressure pushing down on her. She cleaned out the linen closet in the hallway and left the door open when she was done. The hallway was so narrow that the door blocked it completely. Now, to her surprise, that feeling of being watched disappeared. Like a switch being flipped. Happy, she continued on like this for 2 more nights, and then on that 3rd night she was doing bed checks when something in the hallway caught her eye. She slowly turned her head to look down the hallway and froze. The linen closet door was now halfway open and there was a tall, elongated creature hunched over the back of the door, gripping it, its head peering out over it. It didn't have a face or clothes, but it was flesh coloured with elongated arms and legs. It stood at least 7 foot tall. Despite not having a face, she knew that it was staring at her. She ran to the staff office and sat huddled in the corner for 6 hours until the relief staff came. She told nobody but her family, and now all of us. At number 3 now, we have The Watcher. This one comes from Reddit user Baby Butter Blues. She said that after leaving college, she got a job as a nanny for 2 elementary age girls. For the parents' anniversary, they went on a week-long cruise, and so she babysat the kids. For the first few nights, the 8-year-old would go into her room multiple times a night and wake her up. It was obvious she hadn't pre-planned what she was going to give as her reason for waking her up, so she would just stumble through an excuse on the spot, like, I just wanted to make sure we are still going to the park tomorrow. The babysitter figured the girl was just missing her parents and feeling a bit unsettled, so she let it slide at first. However, by the 4th or 5th time, she'd had enough. She told the girl not to wake her unless it was for an emergency. With that, she went to sleep for a few more hours. It wasn't to last though. Around 5 am, she woke up, but there wasn't any obvious reason for it. She just felt strange. She turned over and almost jumped out of her skin. The girl had brought over a chair right next to the bed and was staring at the babysitter. Her long black hair was draped over her expressionless face. The babysitter asked what she was doing. The girl simply said, I just thought it would be fun to watch you sleep. I didn't wake you. That is where the story ends, but I presume at that point the babysitter was just sprinting down the road. That's what I do. Next up at number 2 now, we have the tapping. This one comes from Reddit user Ilanko. He said that his job in Canada involves him looking after a factory. On one winter night, it reached minus 30 degrees Celsius. It was a rough shift. One of his co-workers told him she'd cover him while he went for a quick nap in his car. He parked across the street from the plant so that his supervisor couldn't see him on the camera. With that, he fell asleep quickly. However, just 15 minutes later, he was woken up to the sound of tapping. It was around 3 am, and by the time he pulled himself together and looked around, he saw, well, nothing. The parking lot was big and empty, but there was nobody there at all. Whoever tapped on his window must have been able to move incredibly fast or not even be human. He was too shaken to continue his nap and so decided to head back to work and tell his co-worker about what happened. She'd been working there longer and knew the area better. She didn't seem fazed when he told her what happened. She simply said, oh yeah, that happens all the time with everyone working the night shift. We don't know who or what it is. Can you even imagine? I think the scariest part of that is the possibility of it not being an animal or human. What do you guys think? I also think it was probably hiding under the car. How creepy is that? And finally, number 1 now, we have the dispatcher. Ariadne Hayes said that he used to work as a police emergency dispatcher for the police department in his city. He was working overnight once when a woman called in to say her depressed husband had gone missing. The police asked around and found out that he sometimes liked to go to an old cemetery and just be alone. With this lead, they sent 2 officers out there to look for him. When they got there, they saw the door to an old stone mausoleum was cracked open. They went in and stumbled through the dark underground rooms surrounded by the tombs of the dead. Then one of their flashlights caught a figure standing at the very back. It looked like they had their guy. They were relieved. They walked towards him, but it wasn't until they were right next to him they realized they had got it all wrong. They had found the right guy, but he wasn't standing, he was hanging. The ceiling was so low to the ground that his feet were barely an inch off the floor. The officers hightailed it out of there and told the dispatcher this very creepy story.
In 2023, this short security video began circulating online. The footage shows a security guard on an overnight shift at a hospital walking down a hallway on a routine patrol. The guard stops in front of a closed door. He starts speaking to someone. Only, we don't see anyone on camera aside from the guard. At one point, he refers to the person he's talking to by name. He calls her Abigail. At that same time, a colleague is watching a live camera feed from the security control room. From her perspective, the hallway is completely empty. Concerned, she radios him and asks, who are you talking to? Without hesitation, he answers, Abigail. And this is the co-worker's response.
Are you sure you're saying Miss Abigail? Like, she's been passed on for 2 years now.
The security guard is like, can you repeat that, please? And she's like, Miss Abigail passed away 2 years ago. This next case is known as one of the strangest alien encounter stories in Europe. Back in December 6, 1978, in the mountains near Genoa, Italy, night watchman Pier Fortunato Zanfretta was doing his usual patrol at a mansion called Casa Nostra. Around 11:30 p.m., he noticed 4 strange lights in the garden, and both the gate and the front door were wide open. Thinking thieves might be breaking in, he went inside, where he saw a red oval object over 32 feet across. But that wasn't even the strangest part. There were also creatures, massive beings nearly 10 feet tall, with yellow triangular eyes and clawed feet. He screamed into his radio, "No, they are not men." And later he was found unconscious, in shock, and police discovered a large semicircular imprint in the garden. A few weeks later, Zanfretta claimed he'd been abducted, experimented on, and described the aliens in chilling detail. His direct quote, translated to English of course, "They are green with triangular yellow eyes. Their mouths look like they're made of iron. They come from the third galaxy." And just a little later that month, Zanfretta was driving his patrol car when he radioed in saying something was wrong. According to the operator, his voice suddenly went calm and flat as he said the car was driving by itself. He claimed the steering wheel and brakes wouldn't respond as the vehicle kept moving uphill through thick fog. When other guards finally found him around 1 in the morning, he was standing in a nearby field shaking and crying. Even though it had been raining all night, his clothes were also warm and completely dry. But these events eventually cost Zanfretta his security job when police revoked his firearm license. You probably wouldn't expect a whole lot to go down working overnight security at a school, but that was not the case for this next guard in Mexico. It had been a quiet night as usual when the guard noticed movement on one of the cameras, right by one of the entrances. When he looked at the camera, he jumped. This is what was standing outside. And she, or it, was messing with the door, trying to get in. Now, I know people can look kinda strange on CCTV cameras, but this is a whole other level. This security guard was sitting at his desk during an overnight shift, watching the cameras like usual. At some point he starts talking to someone nearby. From the way he's reacting, it looks like a normal conversation. He's relaxed, responding, clearly engaged with whoever's there. The only problem is, there is no one there but him. At least that's what the security camera shows, but later the guard insisted that he wasn't alone. He said he was talking to a new coworker who just started. Nothing seemed off to him at the time. The next day, he came back for his shift and he mentioned it. He asked why no one told him a new guy would be working with him the night before. And that's when everyone just stared at him. There was no new hire. No one was scheduled to work that shift but him. This footage comes from a social security building in 2020. It was uploaded to YouTube by Joshua Bragg, the person in charge of monitoring the motion-activated cameras. In the clip, you can see a dark shape drifting through one of the rooms. It floats across the space and then fades out of view. Bragg was clear about one thing right away. He said it was not a bug. According to him, the cameras were brand new, high-grade units, and the lenses were completely sealed. He also said he physically checked the camera afterward and didn't find anything on or inside it that could explain what showed up. He added that he'd always had a strange feeling about the building too. Nothing specific he could point to, but he had a constant uneasy vibe, like the place never felt empty even when it technically was. So whatever that dark shape was, he didn't believe it came from faulty equipment or something brushing past the lens. So that leaves one question hanging. If it wasn't a bug, it wasn't a camera issue, what exactly did the motion camera pick up that night? And this last story comes from a now deleted Reddit user who wrote, "I used to work overnights in a halfway house. One time, me and my coworker were chatting when we saw a guy on camera walking down an alley behind our place. The alley was our building, and a brick building on the other side with no doors. We thought one of our residents was running away. Pretty common, so I told my coworker to keep watching the cameras and I'll see who it is. The cameras were on the same fixture, one looking north, one looking south. The only blind spot was right underneath one of them. I walk out to see who it is, and there's no one in the alley. I radio back to my coworker, and she says he disappeared off one camera and never appeared on the other one. So he has to be in the blind spot. But he wasn't. There are no doors in that blind spot, or dumpsters, drains, anything. He literally just vanished. The only other doors on the other building were about 40 yards in each direction, both on camera. He literally just vanished.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the military ghost. This one comes from a guy who said he did his military training at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. The barracks were at least 50 years old by this point. Every night, new recruits were told to stay awake for an hour and mop the floor until the next soldier was woken up to take over. One night, the guy, Jack, was sitting underneath the speakers trying to stay awake when a voice came out of them. Now usually, it was one of his commanding officers barking orders to wake up, but this time it was different. A soft woman's voice could be heard, barely even a whisper. She said, "Private, get everyone outside, right now. Right now, Private, everyone outside." He was surprised, not because it was a woman, as he did have female drill sergeants, but because the voice was so soft. Jack headed down the hallway where he found another guard also standing duty. He asked him if he had heard the voice. The guard said no. Jack thought it must have just been his imagination and didn't want to risk waking everyone up just because his mind was playing sleepy tricks on him. The rest of the night was normal, and Jack put it to the back of his mind until weeks later. One day they had a 3-day field training exercise. On the last day they all sat around a fire and everyone swapped stories. The drill sergeant shared some stories of the base. Jack's sergeant told a story of the first female drill sergeant on that base. She was harassed so much that it was unrelenting, and then one day she snapped. She hung herself from some exposed water pipes using her belt. A few years later they plastered over the exposed pipes. The reason? So they could put the speakers up there on the wall. Next up at number 9 now, we have the wedding party. This one comes from Reddit user PyKing9000. He said when he was in high school he worked for a catering company, so his hours would often be very late. On one such night he was resetting a room for a wedding that was happening the next day. A co-worker told him to go upstairs and get some chairs from the room that had just hosted a wedding that night. When he got to the room he noticed there were still people in there, chatting away and having a good time. He was confused and told them the wedding had already ended. He took the chairs down and told his co-worker there were still guests up there. He asked if they needed anything else from that room or should they just wait for them to leave. It was the co-worker's turn to look confused now. He said he'd just been up to that room as well and didn't remember seeing anyone up there at all. They went up to the room and sure enough the room was completely empty and looked like it had been for hours. Some Redditors think this may have been a ghostly echo of a wedding that has already happened years ago, or perhaps they were spirits looking to recreate the good times they'd had in life. Moving on to number 8 now, we have a story from UltiMabdon316. He said that one night he was working at a fancy hotel next to an airport. One night he got a call from a lady in room 204. She said there was arguing, loud banging and crying from the room next to her. He checked the computer, but the system showed there was nobody in that room due to maintenance issues. Confused, he called his supervisor to see what to do. She told him to call the on-site security and follow them up with a key. When they stepped out of the elevator, they heard the sound of crying. It was loud. His heart started racing as he neared the door. The security guard put the key in, opens up the door and flicks on the light. As they enter the room, the shower is on, steam coming out from underneath the door. There was only one lamp on in the room. The air was very cold, and then he saw her. A woman, stripped down to her underwear, was lying on the bed sobbing. As they approached, she rolled over. She was pale, covered in blood, and just staring at them. At that moment, they realized the shower had stopped and the door was open. There in the doorway was a huge, ominous-looking man. Security tased and arrested him. It turns out that he was a criminal who was hiding in hotel rooms to kidnap and sexually assault women who stayed there, sometimes murdering them afterwards. At number 7 now, we have swinging. Smash Lee Pimpson is the Reddit user who shared this story. He said that he worked in a department store where every year before Christmas he would have to stay overnight to sort out all the new merchandise. One year he was stuffing a duvet into a bag when all of a sudden a picture frame that was just hanging up a few aisles away crashed to the ground and smashed everywhere. He was too tired to care and went to the back to get a dustpan and brush. There were plastic bags of clothes hung up on a conveyor belt on the ceiling. As he looked up, he saw one single bag was swinging hard. It was banging around as if someone had just shoved it moments ago. No other bags were moving. He freaked out and quickly grabbed a dustpan and brush and left. However, when he got to the smashed picture frame, it was gone. All of it. None of the other employees there knew what he was talking about, and the memory of that night has never quite left him. At number 6 now we have The Girl. This one comes from Banksy420, who said they work in a restaurant that has its own bakery attached. All the bakery staff would always talk about the ghost of a little girl who haunted the whole place, but he didn't know that when he started the job. One day things were moving quite slow, and so he did some prep work by himself in the kitchen. He was at the prep table, kind of zoning out and just listening to music. Then he felt someone right next to him, as if they were shoulder to shoulder, a sudden presence that wasn't there before. Then he heard a little girl's voice very sweetly say, "Hi Josh, how are you?" He said he even felt her breath as the words were spoken. He said it felt so vivid, but when he turned around, there was nobody there. He told his co-workers this, and they weren't too surprised. They were all quite familiar with the ghost of the little girl. They just learned to not answer her back. Starting off number 10 now, we have The Slammer. This one comes from a Reddit user who said he used to work as a security guard in an old jail. There were abandoned jail cells in the basements below that hadn't been used in years. Part of his duties involved patrolling for potential squatters. Now one night, it was only his second time patrolling alone, and things started getting weird. He went down to the old prison cells, a long narrow hallway lined by cells on both sides. The hallway was always lit by light bulbs hanging down from the ceiling. He was walking past the fourth column of cells when suddenly the lights just went out. He turned his flashlight on and walked back towards the light switch. Just as he was about to turn them back on, the lights flickered on again. He decided to get out of there. He walked quickly past the cells, glancing at them to check. About halfway down, the lights went off again, and instantly he heard 2 cell doors just slam in the darkness. He ran with his flashlight on straight towards the other end of the hallway, reached the end, and ran up to his workstation. He then called his supervisor and asked him if there were any electrical issues that had been reported. He said no. He stayed inside his workstation, terrified of what was lurking below him in the abandoned jail cells. Moving on to number 9 now, we have The Body. This one comes from Reddit user Yaxax. He said that his very first job was running a cloakroom in a nightclub. Over the road there was a multi-story car park. One night around 1 AM he found himself zoning out and just staring at the car park when he noticed a body fall from the top and then plunge below his vision. He jolted up and ran outside to the balcony to look over, but there wasn't a body on the floor. He was very creeped out, but thought it must have just been his imagination. However, it kept happening. At least once a week, always around 1 AM, he would see a body fall limply from the top of the car park and disappear without a trace. It happened so much that he could remember what the body looked like, what they were wearing, everything. Whenever he mentioned this to the other staff though, they said they'd never heard anything about it or seen anything at all. He watched the CCTV, but the cameras couldn't see anything. He looked up information to see if anyone had died there, but found nothing. The unknown falling body remains an unsolved mystery. Next up at number 8 now, we have The Transporter. This one comes from a Reddit user who said he used to work as a transporter in a hospital. Now during his time there, they were moving from their old creepy hospital into a brand new facility. The old building was being gradually shut down bit by bit. The east wing had already been closed. One night he was getting a patient from the west wing. He saw a small group of nurses who used to work in the east wing. They looked very shaken. When he checked on them, they said they had just been to the east wing to give it one last look over for old time's sake. When they were there though, one of the phones started ringing. A nurse answered it. She said there was a woman's voice on the other end that sounded confused. She said, "How can I help you?" asked the nurse. "Where am I?" came the reply. "This is a hospital. Are you a patient here?" replied the nurse. "Oh, okay," came the reply again. The phone line then went dead. The nurse looked at the screen on the phone to see where the call had come from. It had come from the room right next to the nurse's station they were at. By this point the rooms had all been cleared out, including the phones. They looked into the rooms, nobody was there. They looked at each other in absolute horror and then ran for the elevator. They had gone there for old time's sake, but now they were very eager to get out of there forever. At number 7 now we have The Angels. This one comes from Reddit user DKM2004. He said that just Just after he graduated high school, he started working at a truck stop a few miles outside of his town. He usually worked evenings but had to take a night shift one night. At 3 a.m. he was struggling to stay awake when a car slowly pulled up into the parking lot. There was a guy in the driver's seat who was crying his eyes out, and a woman in a passenger seat just staring straight ahead, blankly, not moving, showing no emotion at all. He sat there like that for an hour. Then the guy got out of his car and entered the truck stop. He grabbed a few random items and put them on the counter. The whole time he kept looking around him as if he was checking for other people. There was nobody there though but the two of them. He then stopped looking around and stared right into the cashier's eyes. The tears stopped flowing for a moment. In a low voice he said, "It's quiet out here, isn't it? So quiet you can almost hear the angels singing." He then left the store and got into the car. The girl had still not moved an inch. What do you guys make of that one? Moving on to number 6 now, we have the president's chair. This one comes from Reddit user Graves, who worked as a security officer at a small company's headquarters in New York. Now, he was working from himself one night from midnight to 6 a.m. Little did he know that one of the employees had actually stayed in the building after hours. The employee hadn't been spotted before everyone left, so he didn't know there was someone there. He noticed a movement on one of the screens, and then again a few minutes later. Perhaps he was imagining things. He headed out to do a quick sweep. He entered a large hallway and saw a flash of movement at the end. Now he was freaked out. He stood frozen for a minute, looking out into the darkness. Then he heard a single loud gunshot echo out from down the hallway. He walked down to investigate, and when he reached the end, he saw the light in the president's office was still on. He slowly approached the door and creaked it open. What he saw has haunted him ever since. The man had taken a seat in the president's chair and shot himself in the head with a pistol, splattering blood and brains all over the floor and walls. It turned out he was having problems at home and hated his boss as well, so he decided to just end his life in his office. The security guard threw up a few times and then called the police. He said he still has nightmares to this day.
This photo was snapped on September 22, 2004 in Mexico. According to the story, a security guard was doing his usual night rounds. It was about 10:45 inside an abandoned office building in Rayons Nuevo Leon. While walking through a dark hallway, he noticed something standing there. He squinted, trying to make out what he was looking at. It was this short, humanoid figure. At first he thought, maybe it was a kid, but it didn't take long for him to realize the thing didn't look human at all. He managed to snap a single photo with a Kodak digital camera, and then whatever it was ran off. He chased after it, but it seemingly vanished into thin air. This is the photo he took. Now, we get plenty of UFO photos and footage, but this is one of the few pieces of actual supposed alien entities captured on camera. It's a low-quality image, as this was a picture taken by a consumer digital camera in the mid-2000s, but the creature is undeniably alien-looking. Could it be a fake? Sure, but it looks rather convincing. Now, I only just saw this photo while doing research for this video, but apparently the image has been floating around online for years, and ever since it hit the web, there's been the usual debate as to how authentic the story is. I will say, Mexico is known to be a kind of hotbed for UFO sightings, and over the years, UFO researchers have zoomed in, enhanced it, argued over every detail, but no one's been able to prove what it is or what it isn't. That's why the image still gets talked about today. TikTok user Simon Lockhart worked overnight security at a hotel. He hasn't posted in a while, which leads me to believe he quit, and I mean, fair enough. If what he was experiencing working here was true, I wouldn't last long either. He'd been experiencing all sorts of unexplained weirdness at this place. He didn't disclose the name of the hotel, but apparently it's known to be haunted. Well, one night he was inspecting this odd noise coming from an attic space above the restaurant connected to the hotel. This is what happened when he got up there.
Hello? Oh my God.
Now, most of us would have done exactly what the voice said. Get the hell out of there. But being that he's working security, he's got to inspect the place. And what does he find? Well, nothing. He's all alone up there. And that was his cue to leave. And this final story comes from a now deleted Reddit user who wrote, "I work nights as a security guard at a distribution warehouse. Mostly just sitting around, checking doors, watching cameras, trying not to fall asleep. I've been here a little over 2 years and nothing weird happens. until last month. Around 2:40 in the morning, one of the interior motion sensors went off in an aisle that shouldn't have any activity. No forklift scheduled, no cleaning crew or anything. That alone isn't super strange. Sensors glitch all the time, but it kept triggering every few minutes. I went inside to check it out. The aisle was empty. No boxes out of place, no signs of anyone being there. I stood still for about a minute, waiting to see if it would trip again. Nothing. As I turned to leave, the sensor behind me went off. I assumed it was picking me up late, but when I checked the panel, it logged movement starting before I entered the aisle, by about 30 seconds. I reviewed the camera footage later. You can't see anything moving, no shadows, no shapes, but the camera timestamp shows the lights in that aisle turning on by themselves, then shutting off. 3 separate times over the course of about 10 minutes.
At number 5 now, we have the kids. This one comes from Reddit user WorkNerd7623. She said she works at a crisis nursery, which is a facility for emergency care for children under the age of 7. She used to work the night shift there. Her nursery was named after a child that was beaten to death by one of their parents in the hope that it would prevent other children from being abused by adults. The nursery was also said to be haunted. Now, she had always been told the stories of a kid's spirit that was seen running around at night. It didn't really bother her though, she didn't really believe it. One night though, a kid got up to go to the bathroom. One of her co-workers helped the kid back to bed and returned to the room they were all sitting in. Soon after, someone heard the water running in the bathroom. They checked and found that it was on. The co-worker swore that it was off when she left. That was weird, they thought. Her co-workers told her that one of the reasons that everyone thinks the nursery is haunted is that many people have reported different children asking about that kid. The children always say things like, "Why doesn't that kid have to go to bed?" while they point at absolutely nothing. A few weeks later, she was watching over the kids as they slept. She was reading her book when all of a sudden, one of the youngest kids sat bolt upright in bed and simply said, "Hey, how come they aren't asleep? Why do they get to play? I want to play too." They continued to point at a wall. Nothing was there. She was instantly hit by shivers. She felt so scared she almost screamed. Ever since that night, she has refused to be in that room alone. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the accident. This one comes from Reddit user Rud07. She said she used to work the night shift at a hotel front desk. She had seen everything. Drunk, angry people, the mentally unstable. She thought that she was prepared for any sight or scene. One night, the hotel was hosting a college baseball team. The team came back around 11 and went up to their rooms and straight to bed. No big deal, she thought. Then, around 1 AM, the coaches came back. They were very drunk. They went up to their rooms and that was the last she heard for about an hour. While she was setting up for breakfast, she heard the elevator ding at around 2 or 3 AM. Out of the elevator burst one of the coaches, running straight out of the front door. After a moment, he runs back inside, shouting, "He fell, he fell." She ran outside, already dialing for the police, and saw one of the coaches lying on the ground. He was face down in a huge puddle of blood. In a daze, she put him in the rescue position so that he wouldn't choke on his own blood. The paramedics got there, and as they were loading him up, one of them wiped his head to reveal a split that was so wide and so deep she actually saw his brain. He was taken to hospital and lived. She got a raise from her boss the very next day, but the sight has never quite left her. Next up at number 3 now, we have the old woman. This one came from Reddit user Expected. He said that he works at a hospital overnight. One patient claimed to be Jesus. He clawed his eyes right out and ate them before being restrained. Those were the kind of patients that he would have to deal with. Many employees claimed the hospital was haunted. He didn't believe them until he saw a few things happen. The 4th floor was always closed. It used to be a baby ward though. One night he heard an actual baby crying coming from up there. He called security but they found no baby. Another night he was cleaning 2 rooms after some patients had left. The rooms were connected and there was one exit. He cleaned the first room, left for 10 minutes, got his supplies and went back to the other when he saw a little old lady in a chair hunched over. He stared at her for a few seconds, thinking that it was strange that they had put a patient in there so quickly. 2 nurses asked if he was the one who had been sitting in the chair. They got scared when he said that no, it wasn't him, it was an old lady. He had seen her too. When he went back to check, the room was empty. She had disappeared. He definitely would have seen her if she walked out and past him. Nobody on that floor fit the description of her except for the old lady who had died in that room just 4 hours before his shift started. Next up at number 2 now, we have The Hill. This one comes from Reddit user Dirty Money. He said he used to work as a night watchman on a large property. It wasn't a big building, but the land around it was, about 50 acres and very secluded. He was always alone. him. There was also a long gated driveway. One night, he started his rounds by walking out of the front door. The area was lit up. As soon as he locked the door behind him and took a step, he heard a woman's voice scream, "Oh my god, somebody please help me," at the end of the driveway. It was quite faint and he took 5 running steps into the driveway, skidded to a stop, and then they ran back inside to call the police. They came with multiple police cars and even a helicopter, but they found absolutely nothing. To this day, he thinks it was people out in the woods who were trying to lure him out of his secluded house and rob him or the house or do something even worse to him. And finally, now at number 1, we have the ghost ship. This one comes from Reddit user Inquisitive About You. He said that he used to be a ship officer on a container ship many years ago, sailing out into the Indian Ocean. On one night shift, an object showed up on the radar on a collision course with their ship. It was a clear night on a calm sea and an almost full moon. They looked out to get a visual confirmation but saw nothing. After waiting for almost an hour, the radar indicated that the mystery ship was still on a collision course with them. The captain was called. He and the other seasoned officers just couldn't figure out what was going on. To be better safe than sorry, the captain decided to perform an evasive maneuver. The other ship seemed to change course together with them and was now back on a collision course. Both of their radars showed the ship. It even had its own name and call sign. When the ship got closer, it became very clear there was nothing above the water. Though it was probably a radar malfunction, the captain ordered his crew to ready the lifeboats and prepare to deploy on impact. The dot on the radar collided with them and then disappeared. Nothing happened. In the next harbour, the radars were checked thoroughly by experts who said that they were fine. Whatever showed up on the radar should have been there in real life. Now, what do you guys think the explanation is for that?
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the close call. This story was posted to Reddit by Kane55, and they wrote, quote, "This particular night I had run out of burritos and chicken. I also shut the thing down and cleaned it all out about an hour before closing. About 5 minutes before I was closing up, a guy walked in and asked for some burritos. I told him I was out of them and that I was just about to close and the fryers were shut down. He walked around the store for a minute. I assumed he was looking for something else to buy, and then he came up to the counter, pulled out a weapon, and told me if I didn't cook him some burritos, he was going to harm me. I freaked out, but I told him I had none to cook. I showed him the freezer and told him I would happily cook anything he wanted from it, but I was out of burritos. He looked in it for a minute, turned to me and said, 'You really are out.' I replied, 'Yeah.' He then put the weapon away and left the store." In our number 9 spot today, we have the bad driver. This story was posted to Reddit by the user novelty_bone, and they wrote, quote, "There was the time a woman drove her car into the 7-Eleven I worked overnights at. All started when a guy no-called, no-showed again. I get called in so the guy doesn't have to work 24 hours straight. Goes well, I'm tired, counting cash, 4 a.m., and all of a sudden I hear a loud noise behind me. Then the rack of cigarettes behind me rains down on me like a waterfall. Once the cigarettes stopped, I used colorful language to ask what was happening, to myself, but out loud, and go check outside. There's a Jeep pulled back into the spot. I check if the driver's okay, and she is, but I hear through her phone that didn't seem to be on speaker, 'How the bleep did you crash into a 7-Eleven?' So I call the cops and the owner. It all gets worked out, but when the cops arrived, they first laughed, then breathalyzed and alphabet tested the woman to see if she was intoxicated. She was not, just a tired/bad driver. I'm betting bad based on the phone call I overheard." In our number 8 spot today, we have the terrifying encounter. This Reddit story was posted by the user I Am Working AMA, and they started off their story by explaining that they had a lot of regulars who seemed to be going through difficult times and maybe struggling from some substance use issues, but that most of them weren't troublesome or violent. They go on to write that one of these regulars comes into the store where they work and he, quote, "wanders around the aisles, occasionally looking over and staring at me for 10 seconds or so each time. After the last customer leaves, he comes up and pulls out a small pocket blade, the Swiss Army kind, looks at me and says, 'I was supposed to do something very bad to you, but I decided not to, I think,' all while opening and closing this thing. Robbing me is one thing, but this guy just directly threatened my life. At this point, the man now hands them the thing. Just hands it over and says, 'Hold on to this for me.' He then looks around for a bit and then asks for it back. Of course, the instinct is to not give it back, but at the same time, this man is also much larger than the employee, so they decided not to cause any more trouble and just give it back. From there, the man just told them to keep their eyes open, and then he left. around. In our number 7 spot today, we have the scary customer. This Reddit story was posted by the user Morthern, and they wrote, quote, "I work night shifts. During the weekdays, it's pretty quiet, usually only the truckers and taxi drivers who pop by for coffee and the sandwiches that we have. But one night I was talking with one of the cab drivers. A car drives into the parking lot, parks, and it sits with its floodlights on bright, aimed towards the glass front. Kinda weird, but maybe the guy forgot what light he got on. It happens. The guy finally enters after maybe 5 minutes of flooding the store part with light, and it's obvious he's on something. He's jittery, wide-eyed, looks disheveled, paces around before he buys a coffee, and stares intensely at me throughout the purchase. Worth mentioning, I'm a 5'2" chick and I smile friendly to everyone, but I work alone for 8 hours in the dead of night. Eerie guy pays for his coffee without a single word, so I continue talking with the cab driver, but I still feel this guy staring at me. It was very intense and unsettling. Cab guy probably notices this and leans on the counter, slides his card over while talking a bit hushed that I should call him when I get off work if this guy sticks around because he's getting very creepy vibes from him. Cab guy was right. This guy stuck around the shop for about an hour till closing, just staring at me until some truckers arrived. Then he left and sat in his car, parked up against the window, staring until closing time. I called the driver and he gave me a free ride home. He later told me this weirdo had been driving behind his taxi with his lights on full power. In our number 6 spot today, we have the mouthwash. This Reddit story starts off at a store in Missouri. The poster wrote, quote, "Had a guy in our parking lot doing what looked to be Tai Chi at 1 a.m. He would do the motions, then kickflip off the side of the building and go back to doing the motions. We told him he needed to stop doing that. He goes to the pump, takes the nozzle off, buzzes for inside pay, chooses a grade of fuel, and splashes it in his mouth. He spits it out, chooses another grade, and then does it again. This is the point where we called the cops. After he decided he was done mouthwashing with fuel, he comes in and just starts loading up with bags of chips, candy bars, a single 12-ounce Bud Light from a 6-pack. Half of the stuff was opened. Cop got there, told the guy he had to pay, then put him in the back of his car. That would have been quite an eventful and also kind of a horrifying night shift."
TikTok user Tim Saver had an awful time working overnight security at what he simply referred to as a facility. Eerie stuff kept happening. He'd hear things, he'd see things. Something was just really off about the place. Everyone knew it, because nobody else wanted to work the night shift. While on his 11th night there, he decided to leave his phone recording in an abandoned unit, which apparently experienced heightened activity. This is what he caught. So, being that security is his job, he knows he has to inspect. He goes to check out whatever's going on inside the access hatch. See if you can spot something. Did you spot it? A pale human hand which disappears when Tim scans back over the area with his flashlight. But then it reappears, and this time Tim notices it. He holds his flashlight on it for a few seconds before this happens. This next clip comes from Reddit user Stalker the Zone, who said he did security at a hospital. He'd noticed a wheelchair sitting in the hallway on his first patrol, which wasn't a big deal. It's a hospital after all. But on his second patrol, the wheelchair had moved. It was now on the other side of the hall, and that's when he pulled out his phone and started recording. Take a look.
See, I no.
He said that this was the only time he'd ever experienced anything spooky like this, and was never a believer in the paranormal until this night. This next video comes from a woman named Karina, who goes by Mrs. Payne89 on TikTok. She'd been experiencing creepy things at work, to the point where she wondered if the place was haunted. Well, at 3:40 a.m., she caught this on one of the security cameras. Suddenly, the light in one of the rooms turns on by itself, and it stays on for over an hour. Now, this wouldn't seem like a big deal if it weren't for the fact that 1, nobody was filmed walking in or out of the room, and 2, the light is motion activated and only stays on for about 15 seconds. Once movement stops. Apparently, Karina had been telling her coworkers that strange stuff was going on at night, but nobody believed her. It had been going on for 2 years. Kids' toys are off-putting sometimes, aren't they? Especially the laughing kind. Well, this Target security guard working the overnight shift experienced that firsthand when he suddenly heard a mechanical laugh coming from the toy aisle.
And you're gonna hear this stupid pony laugh. Luckily,
it was not a person though. It was a My Little Pony doll. But the question was, why was it randomly going off? There's probably a logical explanation, but be honest with yourself. I mean, if you were alone in a big department store like this in the middle of the night and a toy starts sporadically cackling like this, I think you'd be pretty spooked. This security guard's name is Jay Brown, and at the time he was working nights as a security officer at a nursing home in Chicago. Quiet shift, empty halls, the kind of place where nothing really happens once everyone's asleep, except for the odd, unexplained, shadowy figures that Jay would spot here and there. Well, one night, he was sitting at his desk when something caught his eye. A gray, misty shape drifted past him. He just kind of froze, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. But later, when he went back and checked the security cameras, that's when he saw it again. The footage shows him sitting there when this dark, roundish shadow slides past his desk. You can see the exact moment he notices it. He jolts out of his chair, clearly startled, and points straight at the camera, being like, did you just see that? Brown said he'd already told his friends and family about seeing what he thought was a ghost walking through the halls, but nobody really took it seriously. That changed once they saw the video for themselves. And this isn't the only piece of video evidence Jay captured. Not long after the mysterious shadow floated past his desk, Jay noticed this on one of the security cameras. Suddenly, a ceiling light falls to the floor. Now, if it weren't for the ghostly shadows and odd noises he kept encountering during his overnight shifts, he probably wouldn't have thought much of this, but it was starting to seem like someone, or more like something, was trying to get his attention. And as plenty of people in the comments said, I think it's time to get a new job. And the same goes for Sarah0776 on TikTok, who also works the late shift at a nursing home. If most people experienced what she did though, they'd probably have quit that same night. It was late when she started hearing a strange wailing sound coming from one of the upper floors. An empty floor, mind you. She went to investigate. She was getting pretty creeped out and decided to start making her way back down the hall. She didn't notice anything at the time, but her camera picked up another sound, aside from the mysterious wail, a sound that was much closer to her. Take a listen.
Hay veces que se oyen las sillas de ruedas.
A ghoulish voice hisses, "I see you." Sounds like it's right beside her. It doesn't end there either. As Sarah moves into another room, this happens. And that was the last straw. She breaks into a sprint and heads back to the lower floor.
It began with a sound no one should ever hear in a morgue. In 2013, at the Beatrice Ramos Hospital in Brazil, a night shift worker was doing the routine overnight check in the morgue. Bodies arrive after hours all the time, usually prepared for examination the next morning. Everything was quiet until he heard something unusual. It sounded like a faint knocking. At first, he thought it was pipes or ventilation, and then he heard it again, closer. He followed the sound to a drawer that was supposed to contain the body of 54-year-old Valdelucio Goncalves. Earlier that day, doctors had declared him dead from respiratory failure. His death certificate was already signed. The worker opened the drawer and immediately jumped back because the sheet was moving. When he pulled it back, he found the man breathing, shallow and weak, but definitely alive. The worker sprinted upstairs and alerted the staff. They rushed the man back to a hospital bed and confirmed he had shallow vital signs. This became a national story, and not only did the man survive, he reportedly sat up and spoke to the workers later that morning. Brazilian officials launched an investigation and confirmed the event. The hospital called it a misdiagnosis, but the night shift morgue worker insisted he was only alive because he happened to hear the knocking at the exact right moment. If he had waited even minutes longer, the story could have ended very differently. She had been missing for days, and the only person who found her was a night shift worker stocking shelves. In 2004, in Stillwater, Oklahoma, a 28-year-old woman was reported missing by her family. Police searched the area, but she seemed to have vanished. Days passed and nobody had seen her. Meanwhile, Walmart night staff kept noticing food disappearing from shelves before they were stocked. There was also trash in strange areas. They assumed it was shoplifters sneaking in. One night, a night shift worker walked behind a tall pallet of merchandise and found a sleeping bag, a pillow, and stacks of empty food containers. He waited and watched from a distance, and 20 minutes later, the missing woman returned to her hiding spot. She had been living inside the store between the walls of merchandise for 2 days. She said it was warm, safe, and no one bothered her. The worker calmly alerted security. Police arrived and confirmed her identity. She was safe and unharmed, but this discovery was so strange that local news called it one of the most unusual missing person recoveries they had seen. He kept hearing footsteps in empty rooms until he discovered someone had been living inside the walls of the hotel. In 2017, at a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, the night auditor had been dealing with a weird problem for weeks. Guests on the top floor kept calling the front desk complaining that someone was walking around above their rooms. The problem was that the top floor had no rooms above it. The roof was directly overhead. One night around 2 a.m, the night auditor decided to investigate himself. He went up to the top floor, stood in the hallway, and listened. Sure enough, he heard footsteps, slow and heavy. He followed the sound to a maintenance door at the far end of the hall. This door led to a crawl space that held wiring, air ducts, and old storage items. When he opened the door, the footsteps stopped. He climbed inside with a flashlight. The crawl space stretched the length of the hotel, and at first he saw nothing unusual. But then he spotted something that absolutely should not have been there. A small mattress, food wrappers, water bottles, and a jacket draped over a pipe. Someone had been living in the walls. He backed out immediately and called the police. Officers searched the space and eventually located a man hiding behind one of the structural beams. He had apparently accessed the crawl space through an exterior service panel on the roof and had been living there quietly for at least 2 weeks. Investigators confirmed that the reports of footsteps were real. Most people expect animals to break out of cages. They do not expect them to wander into the staff lunchroom. In 2015, at the Buffalo Zoo in New York, a night zookeeper was doing his regular rounds. It was quiet, cold, and totally normal until he heard something crash inside the staff cafeteria. He assumed it was raccoons, but when he opened the door, he froze. A 400-pound female gorilla named Koga was sitting at one of the tables holding a stack of napkins like she owned the place. The keeper slowly backed out and called emergency staff. The zoo confirmed the gorilla had managed to slip through a faulty barrier and wandered across the grounds into the cafeteria. She was calm, curious, and not aggressive. Specialists tranquilized her and safely returned her to her enclosure. This incident became a widely reported story, and the zoo publicly confirmed everything. The night shift worker later said he never opened a door casually again. In our number 5 spot today, we have this string of thefts. In the early hours of Wednesday morning back in March of this year, a series of harrowing events unfolded across Chicago as armed robberies targeted multiple 7-Eleven stores. The police were unable to confirm any direct links between the robberies, but a very clear pattern emerged, with the suspects escaping in a black SUV, leaving residents and businesses on edge. Julianne Logan, a resident of the West Loop, expressed her unease, stating, quote, "It makes me feel unsafe knowing that I could just be at 7-Eleven and something could happen." One of the affected stores, located at the intersection of Morgan and Monroe Streets, had transitioned to accepting credit cards only as a result of being one of the 4 establishments targeted by the armed robbers. In one incident, 2 armed male suspects stormed the 7-Eleven, announcing a robbery and seizing cash from 2 registers. They further made off with a customer's black Jeep Cherokee, escaping in the stolen vehicle. Another robbery occurred on West Crenshaw Street, and a third incident unfolded on West Towie Avenue. The final robbery took place on Northwestern Avenue, where the same pattern repeated itself. 2 armed individuals, cash stolen, and a swift escape in a black SUV. Although no injuries were reported, thankfully, the lack of apprehension in connection with these crimes has heightened concerns. Area 3 detectives were left to piece together the puzzle, conducting a very thorough investigation. In our number 4 spot today, we have the weird regular. This story was posted by the Reddit user Smalls244, and they wrote about working at a store in a really small town. They then go on to explain that they would often have a customer at the store who had a glass eye and who would walk around with a 5-gallon bucket of pickled pig's feet. Quote, "The pig's feet were submerged in this pink juice that would splash all over the damn place when he walked around. Not to mention that during the summer, the bucket would reek." So, one of my first days on the job, he came into the gas station to buy a tall boy Bud Ice. I rang him up and he plunged his hand down into the bucket and pulled out a pig's foot, in which he slammed slammed onto the counter. After a bit of back and forth explaining that pig's feet were not a form of currency, I just gave in and let him have the $2 beer. I paid for it myself. So about once a week he would walk in and we would have this pickled pig foot butt ice understanding. Other customers in line would lose their minds after seeing this deal go down. I'd throw the pig's feet in the woods out back where the stray cats would eat them. It was a whole ecosystem of weirdness. In our number 3 spot today we have the creepy customer. This creepy story posted to Reddit by user Heavy Blossoms is just another reminder of the terrifying world of social media. They wrote, quote, "I go by my nickname at work and have my real name on Facebook. A customer found and friend requested me somehow. I used to think it was my name on the receipt, but I'm more inclined to think he looked up the business and went through the members/likes/whatever section, hundreds of people, until he found me. He sent me a message that said, 'You work at business name. I was there last night.' I never responded." This story is short, but leaves me with absolute chills. There is something seriously strange about that entire situation. In our number 2 spot today we have the emergency button. This is a story about something that would have been great for the employee to know before being in a terrifying situation. Posted to Reddit by the user Skeever2, they explained that this is something that happened to their friend. While working a shift, they had the unfortunate experience of having someone begin attempting to rob the store. A true nightmare, so scary, an awful situation. They of course press the emergency button under the counter. This seems great until they realize that this button locks the door, which means that they are now locked inside the store with the now panicking armed assailant. They finish off their post by writing, quote, "His boss later told him it was to prevent people from getting away. I mean, it did also put in a call to the alarm company who eventually called the police, but for a good 25 minutes he really thought he was going to die there. In the end it seems like he was totally unharmed, so thank goodness for that, but what a crazy story." And finally, in our number 1 spot today we have the missing assailant. This is a creepy story that happened actually quite recently. Late in the evening on the night of May 10th, 2023, the 7-Eleven convenience store in Port Colborne fell victim to a harrowing incident. At precisely 11:13 p.m. the tranquility of the night shattered as a masked intruder stormed through its doors wielding a menacing weapon. The startled employees watched in terror as the glass case shattered under the assailant's violent demands for money. Fear gripped the hearts of the workers, but they complied, handing over an undisclosed sum to the thief. With his ill-gotten gains in hand, the intruder swiftly fled the scene, disappearing into the shadows of a nearby alley, leaving behind a wake of disbelief. Thankfully, no customers or employees suffered physical harm during the ordeal. Despite the swift response from the Niagara Regional Police Service, the elusive suspect managed to evade capture so far. Determined to bring justice to the traumatized convenience store staff, the tenacious detectives from the 3rd District Welland Detective Office, aided by the skilled investigators from the Forensic Services Unit, took charge of the case. Their diligent efforts now focused on unraveling the identity and whereabouts of this very mysterious and scary robber. As the investigation unfolds, hope remained high that the expertise of these dedicated law enforcement professionals would lead to the apprehension of the culprit, providing solace to the community shaken by this chilling encounter.
He expected to find hydraulic fluid. Instead, he found a young man who had survived the impossible. In April 2014 at San Jose International Airport, a Hawaiian Airlines mechanic was performing a standard night inspection on a Boeing 767. When he checked the left wheel well, he spotted something that made no sense. A shoe, then a leg, then an entire person. The mechanic jumped back and shouted for help. Inside the wheel compartment was a boy who had survived a 5-hour flight at more than 30,000 feet. Temperatures in wheel wells drop far below freezing. Most people lose consciousness within minutes. Shockingly, doctors said the boy survived because his body went into a hibernation-like state. Security footage later confirmed he had climbed the airport fence and crawled inside the wheel well just before the flight took off. The FAA called it one of the rarest surviving stowaway incidents in history, and the night shift mechanic said he had to blink several times before accepting he was seeing an actual person and not a mannequin. He vanished from a nursing home. He was found miles away by a janitor who was just trying to clean the floors. In 2019, in Des Moines, Iowa, an 82-year-old man with dementia walked away from his care facility during the night. Staff discovered he was missing at dawn and immediately called the police. The search lasted all day. Later that night, inside a public library across town, a janitor was cleaning the building after closing. When he reached the basement bathroom, he found the door locked from the inside. He knocked, no response. He eventually forced it open and found the missing man sitting on the floor, confused but alert. Security cameras showed the man had wandered inside earlier in the evening and became locked in. The janitor called emergency services and the man was reunited with his family. The story was covered by local Iowa media who called it a miracle find. The worker said he only forced the door because it was his last task of the night. He thought he heard someone calling his name, but what he found was terrifying and real. In 2010, at a factory in Pittsburgh, a night shift machine operator named Jeremy was doing routine checks. The building was loud, but mostly empty. As he walked past one of the older machines, he heard what sounded like muffled yelling. He stopped the line and investigated. Inside one of the industrial rollers, he found a coworker who had become trapped while performing maintenance. The man was alive, but was losing consciousness. Jeremy hit the emergency stop, called for help, and with 2 other workers lifted part of the machine enough to pull him out. The victim survived with multiple injuries. OSHA investigated and confirmed it was a real workplace accident caused by a malfunctioning emergency lock. The only reason the trapped worker survived was because a night shift co-worker listened closely enough to hear him calling for help over the noise of the factory floor. He was doing his rounds when he found bloody footprints leading to a locked room. In 2016, in St. Louis, a night security guard patrolling an office building noticed something strange: a trail of footprints on the tile floor. At first, he thought someone had spilled paint, but when he looked closer, it was clearly blood. The trail led to an office that was locked. He called police immediately. Officers arrived and forced the door open, and inside they found a man who had been attacked elsewhere and ran into the building to hide. He survived the attack, but could not reach a phone. Police confirmed the attacker was later arrested, and the story spread through Missouri news outlets. The security guard said he had almost walked past the footprints because they looked like streaks in bad lighting. He only checked because he had a feeling something wasn't right. At first he thought it was a dog, and then he realized it was something scientists rarely see alive. In 2021, in Queensland, Australia, a gas station worker was refilling windshield washer fluid outside when he noticed an animal crawling slowly across the sidewalk around 2 in the morning. It was not a dog, it was not a cat, it was a massive and extremely rare giant Australian stick insect. Fully grown stick insects are well known to scientists, but most people have never seen a living one that large. They can reach more than half a meter in length, and this one was close. The worker recorded a video which went viral. Australian wildlife experts confirmed the insect was real and likely came from nearby bushland. They said it was unusual for one to wander into a bright lit public area. The workers gently guided it away from the sidewalk and into the bushes. The discovery was shared by news outlets, and people thought the video was fake until scientists confirmed everything. He reached the last stop, turned off the lights, and thought the bus was empty. Then a voice spoke behind him. In 2015, in New York City, a night driver finishing his route pulled into the depot at around 2 in the morning. He turned off the lights, locked the front doors, and walked toward the back to check for trash. That is when he heard someone whisper. He spun around and saw a boy sitting in the last row. He was pale, quiet, and wearing hospital clothing. The driver unlocked the doors and asked if he needed help. The man said he had walked away from a nearby psychiatric facility hours earlier and had boarded the bus because it was warm. The driver radioed dispatch. Police arrived, confirmed the boy was reported missing, and returned him safely. New York outlets covered the story because the boy had traveled miles across the city, completely unnoticed except by the final night shift driver. The driver later said the moment he heard the whisper in a dark, silent bus was one of the scariest experiences of his career.